Hi folks, back here with I guess what is technically part 3 from chapter number 6. So now we're going to take a look at different frauds that actually happen in the pre-solicitation phase. Obviously this has to do with soliciting bids and things like that. The first one they mention is this need recognition. So basically what happens here is a fake need is created and then the company winds up purchasing something they don't need. The other type is a specification. What happens here is that what a company does is they try to make the specification so particular that only a certain organization can get it. So notice here, tailoring specifications to a particular vendor, some sort of pre-qualification, vague speculations. By the way, bid splitting, this is where a couple groups get together and basically bid the same thing so that they get a little bit, each one gets some business. And then taking a look at the viewing the specifications earlier than competitors. Okay, these are always before the bid, before the solicitation starts. Okay, now during the solicitation phase, what they tend to do is restrict it somehow. Okay, and by the way, bid pooling, that was the one we were mentioning just a moment ago, where the bidders get together and decide to all bid the same, and this way they all get part of the business. Okay, perhaps fictitious suppliers, again, overwhelm them with different bids, or you can create different bids using different names of companies. Other methods that they do, they restrict the time, so not everybody, they'll tell the people they want to know that you need to get this bid done by a certain date, and those that don't, they won't tell them, so then they don't get the bid in on time. Soliciting an obscure publication. Sometimes certain government entities are required to put out a written thing and it needs to be published. Okay, so that's what they're talking about there. A little bit more now. This is during the submission phase. Again, generally abuse of the sealed bid process. So typically what happens is people open up the bids and let everybody else know what's going on. So somewhere in there, there's a bribe. Notice here, there's some bribe of the employee, right, that's going on. And so this basically creates an unfair advantage, okay? Messing with the bid log, controlling the bid openings, things like this, okay? Now, prevention, as always, take a look. By the way, it's the same song and dance every time. Check it out. Monitor price trends, change or order amendments. These are all like internal checkings. Patterns within the bid process. Last bidder always wins, right? So that because they know what's going on. Just by a narrow margin. Some sort of predictable rotation. So all of these are just, taking a look at what's there and internal controls, and these are some detection things. Qualified bidders fail to submit contract proposal. They've given up, okay? Here they're talking about something of value, and we've already discussed this some, but a lot of different things. Money, slush funds, consulting fees, like creating extra fees, future employment, liquor, meals, travel cards, sexual favors, basically anything that you get. So something of value doesn't have to be money. It could be anything that has an intrinsic value to it, okay? All right. Next item we're going to take a look at is the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And you've probably heard of this before, but really didn't. This all has to do with anti-bribery, right? So basically, a lot of countries the United States deals with, not everybody has the same, view of a legal system or how things should run. So anyway, basically it makes it unlawful for people to make payments to foreign governments in order to get what they want. Now, there are some exceptions, okay? Now, why do we even have this? Like you wonder, well, why do we need to have this? Well, the first thing is lack of transparency and accountability, and especially developing nations. Not everybody runs like us, and we're not so perfect ourselves. But in some instances, I could tell you, I lived in the Philippines, and this was back during the 60s and 70s. If you wanted something done, you just had to pay somebody. Frankly, if you wanted a driver's license, you didn't even have to take a test. You just had to pay for it, okay? low public sector wages, that would make people, like the local fella in the Philippines. And I'm not, you got to understand, they got a family to feed too. So, but that was actually how it happened back in the day. Weak enforcement, nobody really enforces it, right? And then sometimes excessive discretionary authority. A lot in certain areas, in certain countries, what they say goes, and that you can't really, like here, you might be able to go, to somebody higher and somebody higher. And I'm not saying you can't do it there, but a lot of times they have more power. Okay. So here's all the different things that are covered by it, and I don't expect you to remember all this per se, but the bottom line here is that any of these types of items here, and by the way, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck, unless the duck happens to be this. Okay, so you can pay to expedite the following, and notice they are generally not Foreign Corrupt Practice Act. So obtaining permits. So it's kind of funny. I mean, that was like the driver's license in the Philippines, but the problem there was you didn't even take a driving test. Processing papers. So I guess these seem relatively minor, but again, typically it's still a form of bribery. In general, you shouldn't have to pay these things, but I guess the government deemed that these are of small value, so I guess they choose to ignore them. Okay. So anyway, what are some red flags? Decentralized management in the country. And that means that there's a lot of hands out there trying to get your money. Substantial payments, offshore bank accounts. There you go. That's always a goodie. By the way, notice here, unduly complex legal or banking structure. By the way, same thing with accounting. If you ever see something in accounting and you're going, why in the world would they do it like that? That is a surefire reason to look at. If you look at it and go, why in the world would they form it like this? Why would they do it like this? If it seems crazy, there's usually something going on with it. Unusual payments, all these different unusual addresses. By the way, here you go. Round dollar amounts. Okay. Unusually high or low profit margins on projects. That has to do with them having some inside knowledge. And then at the bottom here, they mention undocumented business expenses. Okay. Now, how can you? What are some risk assessments, some detection approaches? Interviewing employees using computer forensics. They're going to go through quite a lot of that. Okay. Searching public records. Okay. Taking a look at high-risk accounts, ones that basically are easily abused. Like marketing. Sometimes marketing, it could be online marketing. How do you actually see that? Like you're not seeing a commercial on TV. Legal, consulting, training. These are all kind of nebulous type things. At a time, it makes it easy to manipulate them. Reviewing contracts for compliance with Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Okay. So here, these are some, again, efforts. And notice here, conduct annual reviews. And again, these are all internal. They're not all internal controls per se, but they're either internal controls or they're related to them. So for example, let me show you. So for example, tone at the top is not an internal control, but it is a way of being, okay? So, and it's related to the next one, anti-corruption policy. So while it's not exactly a control, it's like an umbrella over the entire operation. This is how if the people at the top don't care to follow the rules, you can be sure nobody else, okay? And so senior management oversight and reporting, that would be an internal control. They mention controls right here. Legal advice, all these things, and you can take a look at it and basically read through all these items here. But one way or another, if they're not a direct internal control, they're related to what's called the control environment. Okay, control environment. All right, folks, that's part 3. Part 4 is coming right up.